Good evening. It says here, Tea and Tarot turned on subscribers only mode. Only channel subscribers of 20 minutes or longer can send messages. Quite right too after last week. Slow mode is on. Send a message every 10 seconds. That'll slow them down, won't it, the trolls? I'm only kidding. So, it's a cold day here in Berlin. We've just had a solstice, I think, haven't we? We're coming up to Easter, in case you're watching this later. I've got a big party coming up on Easter Saturday, and I'm a bit stressed from talking to caterers. But there you go. You can't have a party without a bit of stress. And you can't go to everyone else's parties and never give one of your own. So that's the price you pay, ladies and gentlemen. Today on Tea and Tarot live stream, we are going to be doing a Q&A. So this is not a free live tarot reading live stream. It's more of a chat thing, and I hope that I'm going to be able to talk to some of my regular viewers and subscribers and YouTube friends. I've got some books here. I know Nick Miles asked me about the Wheel of Fortune, so I've got the Esoteric Tarot here by Ronald Decker. This book with a very strange cover. Here we see a man with a wasp waist. Definitely a wasp's waist there. But it's a very good book. And it tells you all sorts of things about the tarot you never knew before. It goes into Kabbalistic stuff in quite detail and astrological stuff in quite detail, so it's a bit hardcore. Hello. Chica del Sur. Hi Robert, happy to be in the classroom. Oh, the classroom. Thank you, Chica del Sur. Redwing, good evening Robert. Listening and cooking. It's the spring equinox we've just had. Good point. You can tell my brain isn't quite all here this evening, confusing equinoxes with solstices and things. But you know, I keep up my YouTubing practice through thick and thin, even when I'm a bit distracted with this, that, and the other. I put out a video yesterday in which it was one of my shout outs to tarot experts and nerds, tarot nerds, because I want to know more about the way that the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot was designed and the collaboration between Pamela Coleman-Smith and A.E. Waite. And I just read a very big, heavy, rather lavish book that was brought out by, what's he called? Stuart R. Kaplan. And it had all her pictures in it and all her artwork and stuff. And it had some essays, and it had an essay by Mary Kay Greer, which I kind of disagreed with. So I put a shout out, and I got some quite interesting responses already. These shout outs are really interesting because they turn me on to other books that I can read so that I can expand my knowledge. Nicholas Miles. Hi, Nicholas. Evening, Robert. Great to see you. I'm watching with my mum, Rita. Hi, Rita. Well, that's very nice. Nicholas asked me a question. I think it might have been. Oh, it was last week, wasn't it? It was a week premature. I think it was to do with the strange animals in the Wheel of Fortune. Well, we could start with that, Nick. I haven't done a huge amount of homework because I've been rather busy, but I've got this book with me, Esoteric Tarot by Ron Decker, And he does have one thing to say about the Wheel of Fortune. I mean, I think the thing about the Wheel of Fortune is it changes all the time, doesn't it? It changes from deck to deck and from year to year, but he does say something quite funny about it. The wheel. Something about baboons. I think there are baboons climbing up and down the Wheel of Fortune. Okay, here we go. He says that the baboons are Thoth's functionaries. Their behaviour allegedly marked eclipses, moonrise, the equinoxes, and the hourly intervals at the equinoxes. This, I suppose, accounts for the apes that scamper around the tarot's wheel. And then he says, even of course, without this piece of research, we would know that wheels symbolize cyclical change. It's quite in depth, this book, so I can't even begin to read you the full paragraph. I think the Wheel of Fortune is a very difficult card to read, but one does one's best. So, does anyone, just in case you just joined me, I'll tell you what we're doing, tell you again what we're doing this evening. It's a Q&A, so you can, it's just chat. I don't pretend to be the world's greatest expert, and whenever I do a shout out to tarot experts online and people write to me in the comments, I realise that there are people who have done so much reading, and it's humbling. There was a guy or a girl, it's difficult to tell on YouTube with people's profile pictures and icons and things. A person messaged me this morning, I think, about my video of yesterday, and recommended this huge book by Robert M. Place, this great sort of telephone directory of a book, and recommended that, and so I should read that and find out more about the origins of the RWS. I'm impressed that the guy has read the book. Sounds good. Was that the baboons, Nick? The thing about the Wheel of Fortune is that one reads this book and then one reads another book, and each book has something different to say about the animals crawling up and down that Wheel of Fortune. So anyway, yes, I was humbled by this guy who has read Robert Place's. Robert Place has this. He's got quite a slim book here. History, Symbolism and Divination, the Tarot, which is quite a good sort of a light romp through the history of tarot. But it's not very in depth. And then he's got a book which is like apparently 10 times the size of this one, where he goes into everything in fabulous depth. And this is what we should all be reading, apparently. And then there's another book we should read, which is about the decans. That there are 36 decans in astrology, and there are, of course, 36 pip cards from 2 to 9, and these pip cards are connected with the decans. So there's a book about a journey through the decans, which tells you all about, in fact, it relates it to the RWS. I was worried, ladies and gentlemen, because I read a book in which Mary K. Greer was implying that Pamela Coleman Smith didn't really know very much esoteric tarot when she designed the RWS, and that she was sort of improvising when she created her images and sort of making it up. And I don't think she was. She may not have been in the upper echelons of the Golden Dawn. Well, she probably wasn't, but she knew them, and she'd been in the Golden Dawn for 8 years when she did that deck, and she probably would have talked to these guys a lot. And there was plenty of tarot research that she could have done without having access to the Golden Dawn's secrets. She could have read all those 18th century esoteric tarot writers like a Taylor. That's not a secret. That's stuff in the library. And so, I was talking about this card that weight thought. Oh, for weight it was just gaiety, and apparently people criticised Pamela for having introduced this idea of juggling and dancing and dealing with two things at once. But actually, I think this is a clear reference to 18th century ideas about tarot. In Ed Taylor, you have meanings like embarrassment, embroilment, entwinement, and I think he's a bit. He's got his hands full, hasn't he? He's entwined and he's embroiled. So I think, Pamela might have been a not very intellectual person, and she might have been excitable and theatrical, and she might have had strange sort of manners, and I think she was quite a performative person, and probably quite nervous. So maybe people didn't understand her. That doesn't mean that she wasn't intelligent. It doesn't mean that she wasn't reading and researching and sitting in the British Library and finding out about tarot. I think she knew a lot, and I think there is a lot of knowledge in the RWS, in the pip cards, a lot of traditional tarot knowledge, more or less esoteric, whatever that means. So that's my current obsession. Let me read what you guys have been saying to me. FSAC, howdy Robert. Last Q&A you spoke a bit about using signifiers, noting a dislike that doing so removes the card from the deck. What are your thoughts on pulling a signifier out of a secondary deck, and by extension the implication of potentially having two of the same card in a reading? Okay, I think, thanks for that question. Just my personal thing is that I've been working so long without signifiers that I find it a bit difficult to sort of to go there and put myself in the frame of mind. I find it a bit difficult to get excited about signifiers, if I may say so. But I completely understand the idea of it, which is that the signifier is the client. The signifier, there he is or she is, and that signifier goes on the table and is surrounded by cards. So you put the querent into the reading. And so I think that if you're reading for other people, I suppose I can see the point of using signifiers. And yes, I've heard of that idea that you use a different secondary deck. And I think that is clever. I think that's pretty good. And I think if you potentially have the same card in a reading twice, then all the better. I think tarot should be serialistic. I think there should be sort of mistakes. I think there should be contradictions. Maybe you, I don't know, maybe if there's two of the same card, maybe you meet your doppelganger or something like that. Whatever it means to you in the moment. So yeah, but I think I'm quite against using court cards as signifiers because significators. Because I think the court cards don't really work as a sort of Myers-Briggs personality system. So I would be much more inclined to use something like the Magician or the Fool as the significator. And then it's done, because the Fool and the Magician, they're so open, aren't they? They're just like ego and id or whatever they are. And just pop them down and use them. And then, yes, use one from a different deck, and then you still got your Fool and your Magician that can come up and give you messages. That's what I do. I think that's it. I think I'm slightly kind of against using court cards. I'm a banker, so I should use the King of Pentacles. It's all too trivial. I don't believe in it. Francis Smith. I wonder why Mary K. Greer had that opinion. I think the cards are incredibly symbolic. Well, I don't want to be. I don't want to start off a Mary K. Greer bashing session because obviously she's a highly important figure who we all love and respect. What was odd about it was that she didn't really say that was her opinion. She used a kind of a strange writerly technique in which she said, well, first of all, she said that Pamela wasn't in the inner circle of the Golden Dawn, so didn't have access to these inner circle Golden Dawn tarot theories. Fair enough, maybe true. And then she said on the next page that some people have criticized Pamela for improvising things and making things up and putting things in without traditional kind of backup or justification. And Mary K. Greer didn't then say, and this is true, or she didn't say, and I disagree. She just left it like that. Some people think this, which you also get, incidentally, all the way through 78 Degrees of Separation, my other bugbear. Some people think this. And so it's a way that an author can kind of present a kind of like a negative or a problematic idea without owning it entirely. But nevertheless, she didn't refute that idea. So I think by implication, she let it get through and she put it in her book. And I think it is complete nonsense. L. Phillips says, every book says something different about her. It's completely true. And I'm going to, someone just referred to this live stream as a classroom. It's not a classroom. I'm not a teacher, but sometimes I get sort of like, and I never wanted to be a teacher, but sometimes I suddenly feel like, oh, this is what it must be like to be a teacher, because I also noticed that lots of you nice people join me for repeated live streams. By the way, my brain is dead at the moment. I can't talk properly, but that's going to be half the fun. And sometimes I ask you what your names are or whether you're guys or gals. Now, I think L. Phillips is a gal. I think that's Laura, isn't it? And I have the whim here to start paying attention and making notes because it's just a bit rude of me not to. L. Phillips. I mean, I know that Nicholas Miles is Nicholas Miles because it says so. That's his profile name. But some of you guys have funny profile names, and it's Laura. And sometimes I write to you by email or something, and then I get confused because I'm a bit of a senior citizen, aren't I? And then I don't remember what your real name is. So I call you by your profile name. But if any of you guys want to tell me what your, and I completely understand that the YouTube, it's a jungle out there, and YouTube maybe should be anonymous. But if any of you guys want to introduce yourselves, I will write it down and put it in my phone, and then next week I will know. So yes, every book does say something different about Pamela Coleman Smith. I think I complained about this last time, or maybe in a review that I haven't released yet. Reading about Pamela Coleman Smith can be a really demoralizing experience because there doesn't seem to be very much documentary evidence about her. And I don't think any academic people have devoted very much time and energy to really delving into it, the evidence that does exist. I might be wrong about that. Here's another book. Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot. Now that sounds like a book, and it's by Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin. I quite like Marcus Katz's work in bits and bobs. This I don't think is one of his or their best ones. And you think, thick book, you think you're going to get all sorts of secrets about the making of the of the Waite-Smith deck. But it's a bit hit and miss, and it's got nice photos in, and it's got nice Pamela Coleman Smith illustrations, dotted about. And it's got pictures of the house that she might have been in and so forth when she was working on the RWS. But it is amazing how little documentary evidence there is in this big book. A nice guy in the comment section, or gal in the comment section, said this morning that Robert M. Place's big encyclopedic book of tarot does have quite a good section on the Waite-Smith collaboration. So if I can lug the book back in my suitcase, if it's not so heavy that it makes the plane crash, I will get it when I'm next in London. Chica del Sur, my name is Maricella. I'm taking it that that's an Italian style C. Maricella? Or it could be a soft C, like Maricella. Anyway, I'm going to write that down. Thank you, Chica del Sur. Thank you, Maricella. Maricella. Thank you. And Laura says they make her a victim. They do make her a victim. Yes, they do. Some of them more than others. The Cat Willett book really makes her into a big time victim, and I object to that. I mean, I can't really have an opinion about feminist issues because I'm a bloke. But bloody hell! I mean, wouldn't it be better to do a bit of research and find out the ways in which Pamela Coleman Smith was brilliant and the ways in which she did change the world, rather than just complain that her life was unfair. Anyway. Where did Katz get the additional information from? Is it speculation? No. And a lesbian, yeah. No, Marcus Katz doesn't entirely speculate. He's quite hard-working in some ways. And, you can read Marcus Katz books, and he says that he goes to the British Museum or maybe the British Library, and he will go in and talk to the people, and he'll get old letters and documents and things out of the the archives and out of the basement, and have them hauled up, and he will transcribe them and put them in his books. So he does work, and he will go down to Kent and take pictures of the house and stuff. So he does work to present original research material, but it doesn't really coalesce into anything. I have the feeling from the correspondence I had this morning with an online YouTube friend / tarot expert. I have a feeling that the Robert M. Place book is a more interesting sort of comment on the evidence that there is. I think there is some correspondence between Pamela and A.E. Waite. And I think there's maybe, recorded remarks by A.E. Waite and recorded remarks by Pamela, and Pamela's letters to friends and so forth. It's a bit sparse, but you can sort of put it together in an interesting way. Robert M. Place apparently thinks that A.E. Waite, I don't think he ripped Pamela off, but Robert M. Place thinks that he maybe underestimated Pamela and didn't quite realise how much reading and research she was doing. And a lesbian, where did that come from? I think that the idea that Pamela's a lesbian comes from, I just think it's like a very 2015 idea, isn't it? Because th- you know, I walked into an esoteric bookshop the other day, and I won't tell you which one. And the woman there was very nice, and she allowed me to do some filming and stuff. And then, just as a passing remark, she referred to Pamela Coleman Smith as a queer woman of colour, you know. And I just think, no, I don't think Pamela Coleman Smith was a queer woman of colour, but I think it's so much, the queer woman of colour is so much as like this intersectional thing, which combines our current desire for social justice. You know, we're now giving respect to gay and queer people, or trying to, and we're now giving respect or trying to people of colour and to women. So the queer woman of colour is this sort of crossroads of identities. There's a very interesting video online by a woman called Auntie K? Who identifies, I think, as a person of colour, but she is clearly a very progressive and critical person. And she just has this video in which she lays into this idea of giving Pamela these identities. She says Pamela was not a woman of colour. Pamela was white, and her parents, you know, moved to Jamaica. I don't know, shortly before or shortly after Pamela was born. She wasn't Jamaican, and then this woman says, oh, the parents were like, you know, they were just capitalists. They were connected to the slave trade. Pamela was not, to any extent, a woman of colour. And then, you know, Pamela as a lesbian. Well, Pamela didn't marry and knew lesbians. That's not really proof, is it? There's absolutely no proof that Pamela was a lesbian. But, you know, queer woman of colour, she was a woman. Talented Tadpole says, quite interesting what people project onto her and the negativity. I like your appraisal of her, thank you. I think Pamela Coleman Smith attracts such a huge amount of attention because sort of in a sense she invented, well, she didn't invent it, did she? But she did, the job she did on the tarot, the job she did on the minor arcana completely changed tarot for absolutely forever and ever. And so she just attracts all this energy, doesn't she? And when someone's attracting energy and attracting attention, they attract projections. But yeah, it's really interesting that on the one hand, I was reading and reviewing this Cat Willett book, which was making out Pamela as this victim figure, you know, victim of the patriarchy, and she had a bad contract and she didn't get royalties for the RWS, and her name was left off the box for many years. But you know, there's another person in the world and another part of the what's the word, the media sphere, who thinks Pamela was one of the oppressors. So it's really, you know, choose your poison, really, isn't it? Anyway, I'm going to read Robert M. Place's book. Apparently, oh, interestingly enough, apparently when the RWS first came out, and it came out, and I think they called it the Ride Away, didn't they? So there was no Pamela name on it at all. the first advertisements for the tarot to appear in the newspaper, they did credit Pamela as the sole designer. So it's almost like it started off as the Pamela Coleman Smith deck, and they reported that it was this deck that had been drawn by this lady who had done a lot of tarot research and knew what she was talking about. And then suddenly that narrative just sort of was completely dropped, and her name completely fell off the box for 100 years. So it's a very strange story. L. Phillips says artists were hired help back then. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a gig, and I think this is what happens sometimes when you accept a job like that. You don't always get the credit. Well, apparently the first, it must have been the 1909, and it wasn't. I think Robert M. Place was not talking about the box, but apparently the advertisements that appeared in the papers advertising this deck, they did give Pamela a proper credit, and they talked about her basing the cards on research, on her own research. L. Phillips says, wait, change to Pam A. Did that have anything to do with her getting credit? Don't know. Don't know. I don't think there are any early decks with Pamela's name on the box. I don't think so. I think we would know about it if there were. Okay. She certainly looked at the Solobusca. There were photos of the Solobusca in the British Museum at the time. Does anyone else have a question for me today, this evening? It's 6:30 Greenwich Mean Time. I did a reading for this live stream, and everything was fine. I didn't see any trolls. Talented Tadpole says, I hope you will write about her. Talented Tadpole, I would write about her if I could find enough material. But some people write about Pamela Coleman Smith, and they're like, you know, was she lesbian? Oh, we will never know. And it's not nice for the reader if there aren't enough like facts underlying the writing. Okay, let me show you. Let me show you the reading for today's live stream. And then you can tell me if you agree. Francis says, I'm wondering how you work with the Hierophant. I find this card very difficult. Okay, Francis, I will answer that question. So this was the reading I got for this live stream. That's me, 2 of rods. Quite a flattering card for me this evening because I don't really feel like I'm on top of things. But I suppose maybe relatively speaking, I'm relatively on top of this particular corner of my life. That's the people who are tuning in. So that's you guys, or some of you. And that's the reading, Judgment. Well, fantastic. We all feel very energized by that and inspired. King of Cups reversed. Well, a bit of reversal there in the old King of Cups. What I would read that as meaning that maybe some of the people tuning in this evening are looking for this sweet spot of self-knowledge and self-mastery, which the King of Cups has when he's reversed. So has when he's upright. So as a reversed quality, maybe that is a thing that is being looked for. That's what I think. Let me scroll back. How you work with the Hierophant? I find this card very difficult. Okay, in my list of very short keywords, I call the Hierophant, I have the word society for the Hierophant. I start from the position that the Hierophant is the Pope. Because he's either the Hierophant or he's the Pope. I don't really think, in my brain, the size that my brain is, I can't hold those two ideas in the same brain. The Pope for me was a kind of emperor, and he was an emperor it's like a steel fist in a velvet glove. His power was extremely powerful person. He's probably the most powerful person in medieval Europe. He told emperors what to do. He told kings what to do. And sometimes, sort of by proxy, he would organize wars and so forth. So he was sort of the king the emperor of all emperors in medieval Europe. But yet he was supposed to be, the vicar of Christ, wasn't he? He was supposed to be the good shepherd. He was supposed to be Jesus's representative on earth. So it's like this strong, this almost absolute power dressed up in the disguise of caring, sharing, and looking after people. And for me, I have the Hierophant as society, because, and I see the Hierophant and the Emperor, or the Pope and the Emperor, as sort of almost like a partnership, that they are the people who tell us how to live. With the Emperor, it's a bit harder, it's a bit more obvious, pay your taxes or go to prison. If you go through the red light, you might get a fine. If you drink and you drive, you might go to prison. And it is very, very clear cut. It's the law. But I think for me, the Hierophant or the Pope is the rule of society. In other words, these almost unwritten laws. If you turn up to a dinner party in clothes which haven't been washed, or if you haven't washed, or if you've got breakfast on your pullover and you turn up to a smart dinner party, it's not going to work. And that is a reality that is as harsh, that is as clear a reality as drink and drive and go to prison. But it's not really spoken, and it's dressed up in the rules of, oh, what a lovely dinner party we're having. And he's got scrambled egg on his pullover. No one's going to mention it, but we're never going to invite him again because he's embarrassed us all. Or he didn't wash. And I'm sitting next to him. And that's how I read the Pope. And I'll tell you a secret. For my April reading, for my reading for April, which I recorded yesterday and which goes out next Sunday, I interpret the main card is a reversed Emperor. And I finished my reading. I was very pleased with my reading. And it was very much something I wanted to say. And I finished it and I edited it and I wrapped it all up and I posted it and I put it on schedule. And then I realized that I had read that Emperor card as if it was a Pope card. And I thought, wow. I mean, there are no mistakes in tarot. There are no mistakes in the oracular moment. You don't take it down. You don't withdraw it. You don't recut it. You don't redo it. That's what it was. And I think I see the Emperor and the Pope as a partner act. They're like, they're co-regents to me. So yeah, and the Pope also, he has keys there are other layers. I think with tarot cards you want to have a cluster of meanings, don't you? A collection of meanings that all sort of make sense and relate to each other but go in different directions, so that when you see the Hierophant in a reading, or when you see this or that card in a reading, you can quickly go ping and draw out the particular nuance, the particular kind of reading that you want at that moment, or you can just allow your mind or your guides, whatever it is, to tell you which meaning to use. So one day the Hierophant might mean society, the next day it might mean keys, and the next day it might mean, advice, someone who unlocks the door. I think my advice is just read widely, and don't worry about it too much. If you can have one keyword for each card, then that's enough, and then just let the other keywords just come. L. Phillips says you could write about the search. I could. But the thought makes me feel tired, L. Phillips, Laura. I'm a bit tired this evening. Can I tell you something else? I think I slightly prefer speaking to writing, and I don't mean that facetiously. For most of my life, I thought I was a writer, and writing is a skill, and it is something that I can do. And you tend to write, and then you edit and edit and edit and edit, so that each sentence is good, and so that you give it more and more push and more power, and more kind of like focus as you go on. But there's also something about speaking, about live speaking, in fact, or speaking and then making a video and then slightly editing it. There's something about it that enables thought to flow in a certain way. And I found that in the years that I've been speaking on YouTube, that has helped me to form a way of thinking about tarot. And I have written a book, and I'm probably going to put it on Kickstarter this year, and I am pleased with it. But considering how much I've said in the course of the last 3 years, the thousands of words that I've gabbed, the book's quite short. It's quite modest. If it goes well, I'll write another one. Chica del Sur, Maricela, says, which card or cards do you think is or are usually misunderstood? It's a matter of taste. I think Pope and female Pope, Pope and Papess, have been turned into Hierophant and High Priestess, and I think that's a pity. Maybe especially the High Priestess or the Papess, because the Papess is such an interesting card. There were at least 2 stories about female popes in the Middle Ages. There was the legend of Pope Joan. We don't know whether there ever was a Pope Joan, but that's one legend. And then there's the fact of Sister Maifredi, who was a cousin of the Duke of Milan. I think I talked about this in my review of Helen Farley's book. And she belonged to a sect, and they were going to form an alternative church, and they were going to make her the female pope. This was like a highly feminist, woman-based alternative church, and this was like the 1400s, the 1420s, 30s, 40s. It was somewhere in the 15th century. It was a long time ago, and I think people have no idea how chaotic things were in the old days. You think now, oh, how could you possibly, no one's going to form a feminist church with a female pope. But in the 15th century, there were some people who fully intended to do that. And I can't quite remember what happened, but presumably the Pope sent an army and arrested her, and I think she ended quite badly. In fact, she did end quite badly. But that for me is an extremely, and that probably is, Sister Maifredi probably is the story behind the Papes card, because she was related to the Duke of Milan. The Duke of Milan was the person who probably commissioned the first tarot deck. So that the Papes card is like a highly anti-Pope card. And the Pope card also is also an anti-Pope gesture. They're both highly, putting those two cards into a deck of cards is a gesture of defiance towards the church, towards Rome. And so I think the Papes could be interpreted much more interestingly. I mean, for heaven's sake, it's an extremely feminist story. And if she just becomes Isis, which is fine, and we also want her to be Isis, and we want her to be a high priestess, and then maybe she starts to mean, inspiration and spirituality, and fine, but and spirituality is important, but there's all those other meanings, that you get from the original Papes stories. So I think that's a little misunderstood, that card. And then I think that the court cards are, for most writers, a bit of a mess. But there is no answer to that. It's very difficult to sort out the mess of the court cards. Talented Tadpole says, the things you speak of, plus your take. Yeah. I probably should write about Pamela Coleman Smith. I need to find an angle. I think maybe I'll write a book of essays about tarot. I can't imagine writing a whole book about Pamela. I could write a chapter about Pamela, and I could write a chapter about, the connection between divination and gambling, for example, which I find very interesting. What is your favourite court card book? It's here. Where is it? Can't find it. Lost it. Just a second. I would say maybe this one. It was my favourite when I read it. Studies on Mystical Tarot, the Court Cards, Yolanda M. Robinson. I have in my old age, I have become my what's the word? Tolerance? I've become more, my tolerance for Kabbalistic writing has gone down, ladies and gentlemen, to put it in a nutshell. I find Kabbalah really, really difficult to get into. Much more difficult than astrology, for example, which I quite enjoy. And this woman, Yolanda M. Robinson, she's fantastic. She's a very sensitive, a very intelligent, poetic, and brilliant writer. But she does come from a Kabbalah angle. So when I first read this book, I was trying to get my thoughts on the court cards together, and I found this very helpful because she's just very poetic and very, very perceptive about the Pamela court cards. And then when I looked at it again the other day, I realized there's a lot in this book that I cannot start with, I cannot get on with because it's about Kabbalah. But let me show you something. The level at which she's working is just so extraordinary. She talks about Page of Swords. I think I'll have to get a proper RWS to show you this. Here we go. The Page of Swords. So talk amongst yourselves while I find the Page of Swords. But the Page of Swords is standing on a hilltop, and there are clouds, aren't there? And there are birds flying around. And Yolanda M. Robertson has noticed, because she's looked at these cards quite carefully, she's noticed that the birds flying around in the sky behind the Page of Swords form the shape of a fish. Have any of you guys ever noticed that? They form the shape of a fish. This might go a bit out of focus as it gets closer. It's a bit crappy, isn't it, my camera? Can you see? It's a fish. So anyway, her point is that you go from Page of, I think you start with Page of Wands in her thinking, and then you go to Page of Cups. So Page of Wands is kind of like the spark of fire, and Page of Cups is the ideas coming out of the subconscious. And then as you go to Page of Swords, it becomes conscious thought. So these subconscious, surrealistic, dreamlike things, dreams in a sense, they coalesce into intellectual structures in the mind. And at that point, you go from the element of water to the element of air. And so the fishes become birds. And there they are, flying around in the sky, but with some sort of memory of the fact that they were fishes. So it's a fantastic book. And, the way she talks about these court cards is so sensitive and so reverent. And, like one of the reasons why I got in a tizzy about 78 Degrees of Wisdom, the Rachel Pollack book, is because there are court cards that Rachel kind of dislikes, that she disapproves of. And I find that kind of insane, because I don't see how you can disapprove of a part of an esoteric system. And what you get in this book is you get every court card is, to some extent, well, every court card is an archetype. Every court card is an energy, is a pure energy. And you can't disapprove of a pure energy. All you should do is study it and be sensitive to it and see what's really going on in that energy. So it's a semi-recommendation, because it's actually in some ways quite difficult to read. But there's lines here and there that are very, very, very nice. L. Phillips, have you read The Open Reading by Yoav Ben Dov? No, I haven't. But whenever anybody mentions a book, I always write it down. What's it about, Laura? The Open Reading by Yoav Ben Dov. Talented Tadbol says thumbs up. 999 ASMR Tarot. Could a thorough reading be accomplished in a deck without court cards? How necessary are the courts to tarot? Oh, that's nice. 999. I'm not against court cards. I did my work. I did a lot of work with court cards. I read this book. I read that book. I very, very crucially, I read Paul Hewson, who connects the court cards to the legends and the famous people from history, from myth and legend, and from the Bible, the nine worthies, or whatever they're called. So I did a lot of work on the court cards, and I worked out my keywords for the court cards, and I think the court cards are brilliant. I don't use them so much as people. I use them as energies. So for me, the Page of Swords is observing. The page of coins is taking things seriously. The page of wands is scouting about for opportunities. The page of cups is being open to inspiration. The page of the knight of swords might be looking for a fight. The queen of coins might be a very mothering energy, almost on the verge of being smothering. So light and shade. I love the court cards. They're 16 great images, and of course, you could do a reading without court cards, but I love it that there's 78 cards in the tarot. I think it's a nice, handy amount of cards. You could add a card and take away a card here and there, but I like the court cards. For example, the knights. They're so interesting. You can. Here we go. There's a crazy version of the Knight of Cups. He's on one level he's a lover. On another level he's seduction, and on another level he's he's someone who makes you an offer. He symbolizes arrival, and the Knight of Battens symbolizes departure because you can't tie him down. Also, the Knight of Cups partly connects with Scorpio and partly makes you think of death because sex and death are somehow connected. I think the court cards are really, really cool things, and I would be very sorry to see the back of them. But I think they require much more work and thought than any other part of the tarot. Oh, okay. Laura, he encourages the reader to interpret the symbols intuitively. That's good. He was a student of Jodorowsky. Okay, well, I haven't read Jodorowsky. I know of him and I know about his career and I've read about his life and he sounds great. And I've actually seen him on either Instagram or TikTok where he does very charming videos where he himself appears. Jodorowsky is I would say the next tarot book that I'm going to read is Jodorowsky. The reason why I haven't read him before is because, as far as I understand it, he specializes in Marseille, and I'm not a Marseille reader, at least not yet. So, friends, I am going to stop in a few minutes and go back to organising my my family event at Easter and talk to the caterers and check my bank balance and pray. Basically, I've been praying quite a lot that this event will go well, and I think it will. But you have to go through you have to go through the stress and the fear and the worry before you can enjoy it. I think maybe the enjoyment comes afterwards when people say, that was nice. "999 ASMR Tarot says, I have heard that the open tarot reading method can be used with all tarot systems. I would be very interested to know more. I mean, having spent my whole life since the age of 19 working with the RWS and RWS style decks, I look at Marseille decks and I cannot for the life of me imagine any way that could be that those cards could be used in an open and intuitive and quick way. I'm just being frank. They seem to be very very austere and to me extremely challenging. I just look at them and first of all I have to work out whether there's 8 or 9 or 10 batons or swords, and then I have to translate it back into an RWS image, and and then I can start reading. And by that time, I'm feeling discombobulated. Okay, it works with RWS. I use it with RWS. I dislike pips too. Though whenever I say that, I do remember an episode of Absolutely Fabulous where Bubble, the PA, discovered seedless grapes. And she was very excited by seedless grapes. And she said, now that I've discovered seedless grapes, I'd never go back to pips. So I can't go back to pips because I've never used pips in that sense. But I feel a bit like Bubble. I'm probably never going to go to pips. But I am going to read Jodorowsky because I want to know what all the fuss is about. And it's clearly a book that caused a bit of a stir. So everyone, have a lovely week. I will release a video next Sunday, and that'll be my reading for the month of April. And then at some stage in April, I will do a live stream. I haven't quite got into a regular rhythm yet, but I want to do one live stream a month. I'll do one live stream a month, one monthly reading a month, and then I'm going to carry on reviewing books, reviewing decks, hopefully interviewing a couple of people this year, and sharing techniques and so forth. So I'm going to go soon. Is there anyone with one last burning question which hasn't seen the light of day? Oh, happy Palm Sunday. Nicholas, a fantastic live. Thank you, Nicholas. That's always so kind of you when you say that. Dark Freight Arrow, will you be doing more great book reviews? Yes, I will. I think maybe my book reviews are something that I'm going to really try to concentrate on. I'm going to try to do one per month. Clearly that means I have to read one book per month, doesn't it? At least. But I have some videos planned. I've reviewed that book about Pamela Coleman Smith, that big heavy one from Stuart R. Kaplan. That's in the can, and that's scheduled, I think, for a few weeks' time. I'm also going to do a review of all the tarot history books I've read, and just a sort of an overview, which I'm hoping will be a useful resource. Cool. Okay, everyone. Well, bye for now. I'm going to go and have my dinner. It's 8 o'clock in Germany, which is dinner time. So have a lovely rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Oh, happy Easter, everyone. Happy Easter.